Coming up on Tech News today, why Nokia's loss of money is good news, but Google's is not. Also, AOL reinvents email in a good way, and Microsoft has some announcements trolled by Google. All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Thursday, October 18th, 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by Audible.com. To download a free audiobook of your choice, go to audiblepodcast.com/TNT and get a copy of Brandon Sanderson's Legion absolutely free at audible.com/Sanderson. And by Ford, featuring Available Sync. Now you can control your media player with simple voice commands. Enjoy your drive while you easily search and listen to your favorite songs. Check it out on the 2012 Ford Focus and at Ford.com/technology. And by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your iPhone, iPad, MacBook, or Android smartphones. Find out what your gadget is worth and get cash to upgrade to the latest iPhone at Gazelle.com. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show where we keep you up to date on the most important stories in the tech world, starting each time with the top 10 stories of the day. We call them the News Fuse. That angry. Nokia reported a net loss of 969 million euros for the quarter ending in September, compared with a 68 million euro loss a year ago. And that's good news. Why? Because the markets expected it to be even worse. Sales were down 19% over a year ago, but record profits from Nokia Siemens Network Telecom Company cushioned the blow. Everything rides on Windows Phone 8 now, which I suppose is why CEO Stephen Elop said he's encouraging other manufacturers, including Microsoft, to put out their own Windows Phone devices.
You've got mail. For real this time, AOL has announced Alto, a web-based IMAP email client that lets you manage multiple email accounts in one handy website. Senior Director of Product for AOL Mail, which is a real job, told The Verge people have multiple email addresses and they want to get it all in one spot. So we went back to the drawing board and came up with something we think is game-changing. If you agree, it's just invite only for now, but we'll launch to the general public in the first quarter of 2013.
It looks pretty. I'd like to get in. All right, Apple, it's time to eat some crow after Samsung won a UK ruling that it had not infringed on Apple's designs. Apple has lost an appeal on that ruling. That means Apple will have to run ads saying Samsung had not infringed its rights. The Apple homepage will have to display a teeny tiny link that says, quote, Samsung/Apple judgment for 1 month. Also in the U.S. squabble, Judge Lucy Koh denied Apple's request to have some financial documents sealed.
Do you think it'll be like dancing iPhones talking about how they lost the case and just trying to distract you from the message?
I believe it's the iPhone 6.
Google announced they'll hold an event in New York City Monday, October 29th at 10 a.m. Eastern. That's 7 a.m. Pacific time. The invites read, "The playground is open," and most folks speculate we'll probably see maybe an Android Point upgrade to 4.2, as well as new flagship Nexus devices. If October 29th sounds familiar, it's also the day Microsoft's multi-city Windows Phone announcements are happening. Nice one, Google.
Popular day. I guess there just wasn't another day that Google could have done this.
How could they possibly find another day?
It was a good third quarter for Verizon. The company reported strong results, sold 4.5 million LTE devices. Of course, the iPhone 5 helped with that, plus its entire Android lineup, and now has 4G available to 250 million people. Earnings were 50 cents per share on revenue of $29 billion, up 4% from a year ago, and in line with estimates from Wall Street. Verizon also said it added 1.8 million retail subscribers. Overall, has 90.4 million retail postpaid connections.
The White House says no way is Huawei spying on everyone for China. An 18-month review found that Huawei equipment is actually at risk and as it has exploitable vulnerabilities. However, it's not clear whether those vulnerabilities were intentionally placed.
They don't like them anyway. Google's Q3 earnings were leaked early in a Securities and Exchange Commission document. Revenues were up 45% compared to Q3 2011 and now represent $14.1 billion. However, GAAP net income was down 20% to $2.18 billion. Google fell short on expectations, so the stock took an immediate dip. But never mind that. As soon as the leak came out, Google quickly announced that they have a brand new Chromebook. It's made by Samsung, and it's only $249, and it's ARM-based, so pay attention to that instead.
The decision to block access to a neo-Nazi group's Twitter account is the first time that Twitter has acted on a policy known as country withheld content, which was announced back in January, meant to balance freedom of expression with compliance with local laws. German authorities in the state of Lower Saxony last month banned the group Besseres Hanover. The German police requested in a letter posted online by Twitter that the group's account be shut down entirely, but instead only access in Germany was blocked. Twitter users outside Germany can still view the group's 1,000 or so posted messages.
Sprint filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission today that it has entered into a deal with Eagle River Holdings to increase its voting power in wireless network provider Clearwire. Sprint will now hold 50.6% ownership of Clearwire's Class A common stock. SoftBank recently agreed to become a majority stakeholder in Sprint, and reports indicated that SoftBank wanted Sprint to take control of Clearwire, so it looks like they will.
Yelp's trying to make its reviews more trustworthy. The site is now flagging establishments that have paid for reviews. Yelp also has plans to let its users know if a business has had multiple reviews from the same IP address. A large consumer alert overlay will remain on offending places for 90 days.
This episode of Tech News Today brought to you by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks with more than, not over. They don't hold them over you. There are more than 100,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature, including fiction, nonfiction. They even have periodicals in there. For listeners of Tech News Today, Audible is offering a free audiobook to give you a chance to try out their service. One that I just finished that I really enjoyed was Republic Lost by Lawrence Lessig, all about campaign finance and how it affects both parties in the United States. Very timely listen. It's read by Lawrence Lessig. It's great. You can get it absolutely free, or any other book in there that you want, by going to audible.com, or rather audiblepodcast.com/TNT, and get that one for free, or anyone you want. audiblepodcast.com/TNT. You also get another free book today. This is a limited time promotion. Brandon Sanderson's got a new book out called Legion that you can get absolutely free, no restrictions, no strings attached, by going to audible.com/Sanderson. So now you can get a nonfiction and a fiction book. That's audible.com/SANDERSON. And you go to audiblepodcast.com/TNT, get a free book. Go to audible.com/Sanderson, get a free book. Now you got 2 free audiobooks. Thanks to Audible for their support of Tech News Today. All right, joining us now to discuss the tech news of the day, Mr. Don Reisinger, freelance editor. You know his work from all over the internet. He writes for CNET and lots of other publications. Don, how's it going, man?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm sorry your Yankees got rained out yesterday.
They need to put me out of my misery. Just put it over and be done with it.
Maybe a night off will be good. Let's start off talking about those Nokia earnings. Iyaz, you were pouring over these reports this morning.
From bad news with the
Speaking
Yankees.
of, there's another Yankees.
Yeah, more bad news, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. As Tom mentioned in the news feeds, Nokia had quarterly losses, but better than expected, so that's the upside. Nokia sold 6.4 million smartphones during the third quarter. That's a drop of 38% when compared to the 10.2 million smartphones it sold in the second quarter. And over at PC Mag, Sasha Sagan, actually on Twitter, wrote, Nokia Lumia sales were down because Microsoft Osborned them by saying they aren't upgradable. Well, MS just buy Nokia already, just kind of sticking it to to what Microsoft and Nokia's been doing. But apparently, Stephen Elop's been talking about all kinds of things, saying that he really wants other companies in the field, HTC and Samsung, maybe even Microsoft. They'd be great if they had phones, because then there'd be a larger ecosystem. And that's pretty much the same message that Nokia's CMO was making, saying that we should have more competition. And she was asked by the Economic Times, this is the CMO is Tula Raitala. She was asked, Microsoft hasn't publicly demonstrated Windows 8, but Lumia 920 will run on it. But why would a customer buy a phone without a clue about the OS? The CMO said that Microsoft would launch Windows 8 on October 29th. The devices are coming to the market a little later. There's enough time for a consumer to understand the OS before the Lumia 920 arrives. All right, so it's the bottom of the ninth. It's the fourth quarter. It's actually Q4 for Nokia.
It literally is the fourth quarter. You're right.
Is Nokia going to be the leader in Windows Phone 8 devices, or are they just going to be like third to HTC and Samsung? Don, what do you think?
I mean, look, one of the best things that Google ever did was launch that Nexus program, because if nothing else, it legitimized products that are running Android. The issue is Microsoft, through its partnership with Nokia, said, well, gee, that's the same thing. Our Lumia devices are just like that, but they're really not. I mean, consumers really don't trust. Consumers in developed countries, we have to make that clear, too. Nokia is doing pretty well in emerging markets around the world. Its Asha smartphones are, over 1 billion sold, the whole thing. It's really in these developed countries that Nokia is not doing well. And consumers in those markets really don't trust Nokia. So if Microsoft came along and said, look, we're going to develop our own product, just like it did with the tablets, and it's going to be called, whatever dumb name they come up with. I think there is some value there. I think it brings the operating system to the average consumer, and they go, look, I trust Microsoft to some extent. I know Microsoft, and I trust them more than Nokia. So I think if Microsoft can get a company or get consumers behind its operating system through its own products, I think there's a chance there that companies like Nokia and Samsung and HTC are going to see their sales rise with Windows Phone 8. But without that, I just don't see it. Nokia is not the company that is going to put Windows Phone 8 over the edge. It's not going to happen.
I think Nokia will lead the way just because they've got a high profile. People remember them. People want them. The larger question is, can Windows Phone get enough support out here? Can Windows Phone actually get enough people to pay attention to it? And I think that's why Elop is saying, I want Microsoft to make a device. I want them to get out there and evangelize and get people used to the idea of Windows phones, because then he feels like, as Nokia, they can make a compelling device and be the Samsung to Windows Phone's Android.
Come on. Can they really? I mean, Nokia really... I mean, we're looking at their products now. They're good. They're nice. I mean, the pure view is great and all, but it's still Nokia. You cannot get past the fact that a company has lost its brand appeal, and I think that is its biggest issue. Regardless, it can deliver a better phone than the iPhone or the Galaxy S, whatever you want, but it's still Nokia's name on there. And I think that is the intrinsic issue with the products. And until it can rebrand itself and find a way to get people to trust it, I don't see any way that Nokia will ever get over this hump.
I was going to ask you, Tom, so you think it's more of a issue with Windows branding, that the Lumia, I think in its first quarter sold about 600,000, and then in this last quarter dropped about in half to 300,000, which, I mean, it sounds like 300,000, that's a big number, but not when it comes to phones.
No, I think it's a branding issue in both places. I'm not as harsh on the Nokia brand as you are, Don. I think it still carries a lot of weight in the mainstream, because people just wonder what happened to it. They're like, oh yeah, I used to have one of those Nokia candy bar phones. They used to be pretty good. So I think they have a definite shot of getting back in it if they make a compelling device, which I'm not sure that the latest round of Lumias are that device yet. And people think of Windows Phone the way they think of Android and iOS. And to your question, Sarah, I think they need to vault that operating system in the phone space up to that point where people think, oh, okay, that is a valuable and great third choice. They need the carriers out there pimping it, and having multiple devices is the way Android did that. Motorola led the way in popularizing Android with the Droid. We talked about that the other day, and yet it's Samsung that's come in and capitalized on it. Nokia wants to be that. They want to be Samsung. But Don, that you raise a very pertinent question: is, can Nokia be Samsung? I don't think their brand is so eroded as you might argue, but I don't also know if they have the chops to create that stellar phone that is like a Samsung Galaxy S or even an iPhone.
Well, here's the thing with Samsung. Samsung does make a quality phone, high quality phone, but don't forget, Samsung is also in your living room with its televisions. It's in your kitchen with your refrigerators. Samsung has established a brand beyond just the smartphone, and it goes, hey, look, people trust us, and therefore, if we deliver a pretty good device, they're going to buy it. And I think there's a lot of value there for Samsung. It's why LG has been capable, at the very least, of holding strong to some extent in the mobile space, because once again, it has those other products we can sell in other areas of the house. I think that's a key component here. I mean, for Nokia, I'm sorry, I don't see Nokia as a brand appeal. I hear what you're saying, Tom, about people go, hey, I remember that Nokia device. But when they walk into a carrier store, they really don't care about that old Nokia device. And I think, and when they walk into the carrier store, the carriers aren't saying, hey, you got to look at this Nokia device.
Well, I think that's the biggest problem right there, exactly.
Well, the thing is, all this hardware has become pretty much the same, right? We've got a large screen. It's got a certain form factor. The only thing that Nokia can do right now is to stand out. They have to have applications and experience that's unique. And one of the problems with Windows Phone 7 was everybody had to have the same experience, same screen resolutions, same sizes, same everything, to the point where you didn't care if you were getting a Nokia or a Samsung or an HTC. They're all the same anyway. So Nokia needs to do something really different, and they're trying to pull in with their mapping applications and their augmented reality things. If they can commit to app development, whereas I don't think Samsung's going to bother to do that. If they could do that, that might be the only thing to pull them, other than their flashy, bright colors, which HTC completely stole. They're like, we're going to have giant, big, bright, bold colors. We're going to be exactly like the other guys.
Well, you make a good point there. Excuse me one second. You make a good point there, because I think that the integration of Nokia products into Microsoft products, when there's Bing Maps and it's into the Windows Phone, that could be a Trojan horse. If Nokia is going to be allowed by Microsoft to put its branding all over the place. I mean, Nokia is one of the leaders in mapping solutions out there, but hardly anyone knows that until they find out about that. So I think it could be a Trojan horse for Nokia if it's allowed to tell the world, hey, look, all the great stuff and software they're using on these products, we're doing it. We're doing it. And I think, will it be able to? I don't know. I don't know if Microsoft would really play nice to that extent.
I do want to clarify that when Don says Trojan horse, he's not implying that all Windows phones are virus-ridden. He's talking about the actual metaphor of the Trojan horse.
Right, the metaphor, yeah.
You know what? Windows Phone is going to have a lot more features we don't know about. There's an announcement coming up October 29th. It's a Monday, and it will be in 3 different places around the world. Microsoft's going to show off all the new features that they haven't told you about already. It starts at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time in Milan, and then at 10 a.m. in San Francisco and London. So that day, Microsoft's going to own the news cycle because they've got 3 locations there. It's the Windows Phone announcement. They'll talk about when it's going to ship, except Google last night announced that they're going to have an announcement, and it's going to be at 7 a.m. Pacific in New York City. And all they say on their invite is the playground is open. Ooh. Everybody thinks that's, by the way, the Google Now kind of style there. So it might be a Google Now related announcement. But everybody thinks we're probably going to see that LG Nexus that's been rumored. We might see a new Nexus 7. There's been rumors of a $99 tablet from Google. Might get a point upgrade to Android 4.2. Some people are saying we'll get multiple Nexus manufacturers. Google's going to say, you want a stock experience on Android? This is what we're going to do. All of that is fun to speculate about, but what about this move of Google to plump their announcement 3 hours before Microsoft's big phone announcement on the same day?
How very Jobsian.
Is it? Because Jobs wanted to own the day. I wouldn't see Jobs putting it on a day that anyone else had.
Well, I don't know about it being like something that Steve Jobs would do to share a day, but it is a thunder stealer. Don't you think? For sure. Well, it's a thunder stealer for both. It made it backfire on Google because Microsoft does get the last word. If they have the more stellar announcement, everybody's going to forget about the Google announcement earlier that morning. Well, Google did this before with their maps, right? I mean, when iOS was going to change things, they're like, oh, by the way, we have awesome maps. Look at our maps. They're great. The thing is, Android Chromebook! Big diversion. It's shiny. It's Chrome. Look at it. But the thing is, it seems like it's kind of a jerk move. I mean, Microsoft's kind of like, they're already in the dirt when it comes to their market share with Windows Phone. Google doesn't care about that.
They don't need to do this, though. That's the thing. Like, there's no point to this. They're going to own the news cycle anyway. Microsoft is timing this because their Build Developers Conference starts the next day. So they want to roll out all the features and then get everybody really excited the next day. I get the logic behind Microsoft announcement. Don, why does Google pick this day? Is it just because they don't care about the calendar?
Yeah, I mean, look, Google, why should Google care, I guess? I mean, look, Microsoft's doing it, who cares? I think Google says we have, we can own the news cycle. We are a more popular draw for a lot of people. Android is far more popular than Windows Phone. The device that LG is going to offer, if the rumors are true, is going to be something that will probably make Google look better on that day than Microsoft. Look, why not? Microsoft and Google, there's no love lost, as we all know. And I think Google's saying, hey, you want to play with the big boys? Well, here we go. We'll play, and we'll see what happens. And I think Google's saying there's nothing you can show with Windows Phone that's going to be so impressive that you're going to push us onto the second page. It's not going to happen. So, but I don't think necessarily it's also so bad for Microsoft. Microsoft, okay, so Google's coming, and it's going to be a big thing, and we'll have that. But like you said, Microsoft is going second, which I think does help things. And Microsoft usually doesn't care too much about that first day anyway. It's a lot more, we'll be seeing Ballmer more often, I'm sure, in the week past that. A lot of interviews with executives. Microsoft likes the long tail. It doesn't like that one hit like Apple does today and then, hey, we'll watch the stock rise tomorrow. Microsoft likes to hang out and get his executives out there for a week. And so, okay, we'll have that big showing today. And then over the next few days, we'll continue to put it out there. So I don't necessarily think either side will lose here, but they both could win for sure.
Yeah, you're right. The rising tide effect could be really good for Microsoft as well. It's an excellent point.
I guess I'm glad they're just not doing the event at the same time. You know how like when networks do that, take their hit show, put it against the other hit show?
Yeah.
I don't want to DVR that.
Counter-programming.
But at least it's one after the other.
But a lot of that is a defensive move. I mean, we're all sort of going like, Google has nothing to worry about. They're not going to get pushed to the second page. Why would they do this? What a jerk move to Microsoft. I mean, Microsoft is absolutely a legitimate competitor.
It's just business, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It's business,
Right.
And I think it's business when you feel threatened.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will be covering the announcements. Here's what we're going to do. Monday, October 29th at 7 a.m., we'll be in here covering the Google announcement from New York City Live. We will just stay live until TNT at 10 a.m. Hopefully, we'll get a lot of information out of the Milan announcement at 9:30 and be able to talk about it right at TNT. But Alex Gumpel, our resident Windows Phone expert here at TWiT, will actually be monitoring the announcements. And during Tech News Today, we'll bring you those announcements as they happen as well. So that's the plan for October 29th. Meanwhile, Color, the app, got a lot of hype, went away. And then it looked like it was dead, but it's not dead yet.
This is one of those stories that the tech press just loves because everything has changed several times in the last 24 hours. Yesterday, on the 17th, VentureBeat published a post saying Color Labs, the parent company, is shutting down, had an excerpt. At first, they didn't know who had sent the mail. They went back and figured out that it was from the finance vice president. The message said, Color is going through a number of changes. Last week, the board and major shareholders voted to wind down the company. We ask that you politely cancel any existing commitment stating, we're closing our redacted program, probably to sales staff. TechCrunch quickly posted a comment saying they talked to Sequoia Capital, which is Color's biggest investor, who said, Color's not shutting down. Unnamed representative from that company, but emphatically, Color's not shutting down. Now, you might remember that the whole reason that Color has been in the news up and down so much over the last year and some change is that they got a lot of attention when they got $40 million in venture capital money before they had even launched. That's a lot of money, and this was when cries of the Silicon Valley bubble is at its height really started to get going when you see stuff like this. Since then, the Color app launched. It was a photo sharing app. Didn't get a lot of traction besides a lot of attention at the beginning, which is fairly common. Had pivoted to sharing videos on Facebook. A couple months ago, there were reports that the CEO founder, Bill Nguyen, hadn't even really been in the office for the last couple of months, was on sabbatical, didn't really look good. So TechCrunch says, well, Sequoia Capital says that Color's not shutting down. Later last night, the Next Web posts, they have very trusted sources, that Color is about to be acquired by Apple. And not just that, but for a price that's in the high double-digit millions.
Wait, Apple?
Apple Computer.
Why would they buy Color?
Well, good question.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what everybody was saying. High double-digit millions. What are we talking, $90 million? What in the world? Next Web says, deal's done. Papers have yet to be signed, but we're going to hear about this pretty soon. Here's the interesting thing. Bill Nguyen ran Lala, which sold to Apple back in 2009 for $80 million, has a history with Eddie Q. The Next Web says he actually had another version of Color that he had shown Q and the folks at Apple back in the day. And maybe Apple really liked that other version that for whatever reason didn't end up becoming the app that we know as Color. Some other folks say this is about patents.
That makes more sense to me.
Color's filed applications for patents, very general patents, things like sharing content among a group of devices, sharing content among multiple devices, storage of user device group information. I mean, none of this really means anything. And then get this. Color Labs, the company, has the word color trademarked.
for particular usage. That could be all Apple is interested in.
That could be.
That could explain it right there.
That could be.
They've got enough cash to just be like, we would like to own that word color.
And, this wouldn't be the first company that spent a lot of money on patents this year.
Yep.
Facebook did this. Google did this with Motorola Mobility. But here's where the story gets even more crazy.
We would just love to sue Samsung for using the word color.
Right? All Things D is now saying, no, none of this is right.
Oh, boy.
It's just Color's engineering team. It's about 20 people being acquired by Apple for a nominal price, something like $2 million to $5 million. This has nothing to do with technology, intellectual property, domain names, or liabilities. Those are being left with the company. That company still has cash in the bank, something like $25 million. That company is going to be wound down. So it's almost as if it's come full circle. The VentureBeat story was not necessarily wrong. They just didn't understand why.
Yeah.
There was an email that was sent out to people within the company saying, let's sort of wind down the business because this is all going away.
And no ink is dry on anything yet.
No.
So,
and in fact, these are all unnamed sources familiar with the matter. It's just amazing how much a story can change in a very short period of time. I think probably the All Things D version of the story makes the most sense. Color has obviously engineers. They're very talented. Apple might like to have them. Apple acquired Particle earlier this week.
The intellectual property too, though, if they're going to buy the people.
Well, I don't know that they don't want it. I just don't know that they're necessarily willing to pay what was reported that they were paying.
Well, Apple swallows companies whole, and then they just take whatever they want out of it. So, like, if you think Color's going to exist after this, you're dead wrong. They're going to take these engineers, use them for whatever. They're going to take the IP and do whatever they want with it. It's just like what happened with Lala. Lala's sitting around, and what exactly happened? Some of that technology is in iTunes somewhere, but we're...
Well, it's iTunes Match.
Right, but the thing is, it's not like Color's going to exist, and I'm sure they're going to use every single part of it. They're like a very efficient hunter, right? They're going to kill Color. They're going to use every part of it until it's gone.
We've made this lovely curtain out of its bones.
Right, exactly.
And we boiled some of it for stock, and then...
The Color stock.
Don, do you think we're off here? Do you think we're missing anything?
For Apple, it's chump change, right? Who cares? So you pay 40, 50 million bucks, you pay 10 million, who cares? You buy it, you do whatever the hell you want with it. I think, I do think there might be some value, though, potentially down the road in developing a color-like app built into iOS. I mean, look, they said Apple has shown some willingness to go social. Color did do some interesting things. Say, hey, look, you're at this event, broadcast it to me, blah, blah, blah. Will Apple really invest so heavily? I don't know. We'll see. But for that amount of money, it gives Apple options. If it gives it the intellectual property, I do think the intellectual property makes sense here. I do think there's some value there for Apple just because. So they have that option. They have the option to use the engineers however they want. And if they do want to resurrect that functionality, why not? I mean, for that amount of money, Apple makes that in an hour? I mean, no. Who cares, right? Yeah. You just write a check and you're done with it. So I think for Apple, why not? Buy the patents, get the domain name, which everyone seems to gush over, and walk away and see what you want to do with it at a later time.
And we call it Apple Color. We think you're going to
exactly. There you go.
This episode of Tech News Today brought to you by Ford, featuring Sync's versatile entertainment features like browsing your music collection by genre, album, artist, playlist, song title. Sync allows voice-activated control of your media player. It'll play your list of music you're in the mood for. Just say, play some jazz. Or if you're listening to a song already, play some stuff that's similar than this. It'll create something on the fly. Listen to your entertainment on almost any device. Voice control your music no matter how it's stored. You can listen to it via Bluetooth streaming from pretty much any smartphone. A USB drive that's plugged in, iPod, iPad, MP3 player, and iTunes tagging is really cool if you're listening to HD radio and all of a sudden you're like, I never heard this song. I want to remember what the song is. What's the name of the song? You just tell it to tag it, and then it saves that tag to your iPod, and you can purchase the song directly from iTunes at a later time once you're done driving. Best of all, Ford offers Sync on every 2012, 2013 Ford vehicles in the United States of America, including the 2012 Ford Focus. You can learn more about this and other technologies Ford is bringing to its vehicles at Ford.com/technology. They got great stuff. You got to go check it out, Ford.com/technology, and we thank them for their support of Tech News Today. Okie dokie. Looks like Newsweek is no longer going to publish. As of December 31st, no more print edition of the paper, but editor Tina Brown announced today that Newsweek Global will continue as a tablet application that you can subscribe to. Now, It will be supplemented with content from the Daily Beast, and the dailybeast.com will also be taking Newsweek content and running it. Those two merged back in 2010, so they're essentially sharing a newsroom now. Newsweek lost $40 million this year and has seen its subscribers fall from 3 million to 1.5 million within the last decade. Daily Beast, on the other hand, which hasn't been making money in the past either, saw a 70% increase in traffic this year to 15 million unique monthly visitors. Newsweek, more staid, traditional paper of record type of publication. The Daily Beast is a little more sensational, getting an opinionated, more tabloidy. What do we think? It seems like a seminal event for an 80-year-old publication like Newsweek to say, no more paper edition.
Well, they lost half of their subscribers in 10 years. I mean, it's not as if they lost half of them in 1 year. So this is a steady but persistent decline. This looks to me as if... and Tina Brown obviously knows that the Daily Beast, she knows what she's doing with the Daily Beast, and the increase in traffic is something that you could say, well, Huffington Post or the Drudge Report. I mean, there are a lot of publications who have a similar model to the Daily Beast when you mention tabloidy, but also very up-to-the-minute updates. That just makes more sense. Newsweek isn't really closing the Newsweek brand completely. They're going to have a subscription tablet edition. It just seems like it's forward thinking. It seems like a modern way to keep a business going when you know that you have fewer subscribers than you did 10 years ago, but still enough so that you want to keep people happy.
With the amount of tablet devices that are out there, or readers you can get, either e-ink or the super cheap ones, the rumors of like a $99 Nexus device, like there's all kinds of ways to consume this content that people would pay for that way instead of going to get a dedicated magazine subscription. So it's like the market is mature enough that I think that while this might be kind of sad moment that Newsweek is no longer going to be publishing by the end of the year, it just shows that the tablets and smartphones have become these really great consumption devices because they can do and display things that they couldn't before. Because remember the old web, we kind of had this magazine layout, it just didn't work. But nowadays, you can really have a very rich experience that mimics a magazine. And you have displays now that are capable of showing really high-res things like the iPad.
Don, are you going to miss Newsweek?
No, I mean, look, I'm not so sold on this idea that a print publication going into onto a tablet is going to be so successful that, look, in the tech world that we live in and work in each day, a lot of people will sit there and open up their iPad and flip through pages and go, wow, this is really cool. I have a magazine on my iPad. But, we have to take a step back and look at the average person, the average consumer who has been subscribing to this print publication for a long time. How many of those 1.5 million subscribers are really going to go to the iPad to buy this magazine? I mean, I think you're going to have some, but if you have a print magazine in your hand right now, in some way you've been conditioned to follow that path. And so it takes an extra few steps to get to the iPad. And I'm not necessarily sold, based on what we've seen so far with magazines on iPads and tablets, that this is really the now. I mean, will it happen over time? I think it has to, because I think more and more people are going to be conditioned to do that. But we still have a very large population of magazine readers that simply don't want to transition to the iPad right now. And I think we need to acknowledge that. And I think Newsweek will have to acknowledge that, because I don't see 1.5 million people going over there. I probably don't even see 500,000 people going over there, but we'll see.
Yeah, The Economist, The Atlantic, those are still putting out their print versions, and they're doing very well, and they also have tablet versions. I think what we're seeing here is that you have to be much better to stay in the game because content is universally accessible, and I think that's what's been threatening news in a lot of situations. And Newsweek realized, you know what, the expense of putting out the print edition just doesn't make sense anymore. Let's talk about good old Jack Dorsey saying that we should not call people users. He had a Tumblr blog post yesterday.
Yeah, this is his main Tumblr. He tells a story that he had a board meeting recently, and that one of the newest members of the board asked, "Why do you call Square users users?" Dorsey said, "I didn't have a good answer. That's just what we've called them for a long time in many companies." And he goes into how he started to think of people as users back in hacker culture. A user was the person that wasn't technical, wasn't creative, just uses resources, isn't making or producing anything. And then internet companies picked up on that because you have a business model that depends on two classes of usage. You've got your paying customers, and then you've got your non-paying customers subsidized by viewing ads and that sort of thing. So he decided, you know what? That board member is right, and we shouldn't be calling people users because that it brings down the overall point of any company, which is to serve your customers that are valuable. By calling them users, it's diminishing their importance. It's not thinking about
Makes them sound like adults.
Community as people, I guess. Hey, he says, we speak about user-centric design. We speak about user benefit, user experience, active users, user names. I would agree with Dorsey that all of those are very familiar to me, and they don't really offend me or anything. But he says, the intent is to consider people first, but the result is a massive abstraction away from real problems that people feel on a real basis. And he says, I expect all of you to make certain that our customers, we want to call them customers, are always first and the only focus of our efforts. If there's an absence of focus anywhere in this company, tell me and we'll correct it. And if I ever say the word user again, immediately charge me $140. From this moment forward,
for each character,
let's stop distancing ourselves from the people that choose our products over our competitors. We don't have users, we have customers, we earn.
Can I just please just puke now? I mean, give me a break. Like this reeks of BS, corporate speak. It's a, hey, look, I'm on your side, user. I love you so much, user. Please love me too, user. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And it's so, at what point are we going to be able to see through all this and go, look, it's a user who cares one way or the other. If I call it a customer, what's next? Did Apple's going to come in, Tim Cook's going to write a blog post saying that he doesn't want to call them customers anymore. They're going to be his partners with iPhone. I mean, come on.
Disney calls them guests.
Yeah. So, there you go. Guests. That's another great name that is just contrived for no other reason than to pretend like a corporate a CEO is really looking out for the user. At the end of the day, they're looking out for profits. And so whether they call you a user, an owner, or a guest, or whatever you want, it really doesn't matter. And so why is he wasting an entire blog on this thing? It's sickening.
Profit center units.
Well, profits are also based on customers being happy with a company and paying more into that company. Are they not happy
by being called a user? Is that really making them so upset? I don't see that.
It doesn't make me upset either, but I wonder how much internal messaging and company culture within the company ends up trickling out to the people who are using the product.
It sounds like a response to the whole app.net outgrowth. We're like, we're just being used as this, and they're going to try to get money off of us. Let's just change the message. That's what Dorsey's doing, right? He's saying, we're not going to call you users. That's not what we do anymore. Because the whole appeal about app.net was, we won't be doing what Twitter did. And the fact that Jack Dorsey was a part of that, maybe that would go over there. But he's talking about for Square in particular, though. So
the thing is that this blog post was sort of to say, hey, people who use Square, this is something that I sent out to my company. Here's the email printed in full. I don't think this is so much about, Iyaz, we're not going to call you a user to your face anymore because that's not polite. It's more of this is how we're going to think about people who are using our product because we want as many customers as possible.
I get what Don's saying. You can tend to overthink this stuff, but words do matter. And when you're referring to your customers, what you call them matters as well. I agree, Don. I don't think anyone's out there going, I just got called a user. I don't like this company. But there is an opportunity for them to say, like, hey, if we come up with a name that people do like, that might actually make them have a positive association that they don't have with other companies. On the other hand, I've been through this. At Tech TV, at ZDTV.com, we're like, well, they're not users because they're audience members, but they're not audience members when they're on the web, but they're listeners, but they're only listeners when they're listening to the radio, but they're In the end, we came back to calling them users because, you know what? We all knew what that meant, and it wasn't offensive. So I don't know. I get what Jack Dorsey is saying here, and I think the message is right. We want to treat our audience, our customers, with respect, make them feel valued, because that's how you make customers happy and make them use your product. And so I think that's fine. You know, whether I'm offended by being called a user or not, sort of beside the point, if that's really the message of what he's saying. Let's move on to ultraviolence. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm misreading it. Ultraviolet.
Well,
does ultraviolence to your video collection sometimes, though?
Something like that. I mean, you can watch ultraviolet videos on Ultraviolet, I'd imagine, because there's 7,200 UV titles out there right now. Now, there's this update about what's going on with Ultraviolet these days. It launched back in February 2012. The big announcement, there's 5 million accounts. There's 5 retailers right now with Walmart, Flickster, Warner, Sony, a whole bunch of companies on board here. But right now, the register was kind of, Reg Hardware was kind of irritated by the fact that this common file format that was promised a long time ago, that once you buy an Ultraviolet video and then you download it, it should play on all the platforms. This has not yet become a reality. So right now, if you download content, it's tied to that supplier's own playback apps. So if you get it on Flickster, you're going to be viewing it on Flickster. You can't look at it with your Barnes & Noble Nook until this thing gets its act together. What I'm kind of curious of, because I would like this to work, if Ultraviolet got its CFF act together, the common file format, will that make it a success, or does it need the participation of Amazon and Apple, because those formats aren't compatible with Ultraviolet, to be a real success in this Ultraviolet world?
100% needs Apple and Amazon on board.
That's absolutely.
Yep. That's. Absolutely. I mean, I feel like you don't even need to say that much more about it. The problem is we don't have MP3 the way we had MP3 for audio. For video, you have multiple formats. There's not one format that everybody has adopted. So it has to play on every device. Putting a DRM scheme on top of it, we found with music, is not the easiest way to make music portable and play on every device. What we found is when you drop DRM and you come up with business models can take advantage of the flexibility of MP3, you get a great amount of uptake from the users. So what I think needs to happen is we need to agree on a file format, but I'm not sure that CFF is the one that's going to get everybody to agree with it.
Don, what do you think? Because I'm thinking if people don't notice the DRM, that's when it gets annoying, right? Like the Kindle has DRM on its books, but you can get the Kindle app on anything. So not a lot of people complain about exporting it out because they can access it anywhere. If this file format was readable on anything, including the Nook and well, let's say even the Fire, would this thing make a difference then? Because the DRM seems to only get in the way when it doesn't work, and Ultraviolet's been a little bit messy when it comes to that.
Yeah, but let's not forget though that the company behind that Kindle DRM is Amazon. Let's not forget it on iTunes, because really you can't play your iTunes music elsewhere. But that because Apple is there and it'll allow it to play on all Apple products, and that then people are happy with it. That, I think, is the biggest issue. At what point, because you can have the greatest thing in the world. You can have, look, we have the CFF, it's here, we love it, you can use it on this device. But if Apple's saying, yeah, but that is out there, we know it's out there, but guess what? We're going to lock you into our stuff, and you're going to have to buy our stuff, and guess what? It's a different format. And Amazon will do the same thing. And so the problem is when the majority of people are using those companies' products, and the majority of people just don't really care all that much about this stuff, you're really not going to see a change. And I think that's the biggest issue. Look, people should have been outraged at Apple forcing you into its products and its music formats, but they really weren't. They were, hey, I'm going to keep buying iPods because the music that I want still works for this. And so until we can get over that hump, we can get people to say, you know what, Apple and Amazon, you guys need to start playing nice with us. You have to start playing the game here. I don't necessarily think this CFF will really work. I just think that these companies are change agents. Apple, Amazon, they are the kinds of companies that will be able to dictate what happens over the next decade. And unless they sign on to this kind of thing, it's not going to work.
All right, let's wrap up the show with the randomizer.
Randomizer.
BBC has an article about passive-aggressive Wi-Fi names. It's a funny read. It's worth a
wrong button.
It's not time for the calendar yet. It's worth a look. There's some funny names in here, but it's something I'd already noticed. Just kind of going around different people's houses and saying, "Hey, what's your Wi-Fi?" And then you see all the names for the Wi-Fi in their apartment complex or their neighborhood. And I have been noticing more of these sort of like, I can hear you having sex, or, please clean up your trash in the Wi-Fi names. It's become a way to communicate with your neighbors without confronting them directly. Has anybody else noticed this in real life?
I have I live in a big building, so there are a lot of Wi-Fi networks that I can pick up. It's a long list of them, and they're all very strange. I think there's less of infighting with neighbors. Your music is annoying. Well, you're stupid. I don't see any of that, although I think I would think it was very amusing. More just shock value networks.
Just coming up
profanity.
with like a really like nasty name.
Yeah, or just stuff where you're like, whoa, who's that? Is that the guy in number 6? I don't know. Or just some weirdo on the street? It's hard to say.
Goatsy.
So I say, well, no, I haven't seen that yet. But I mean, there's no reason to say. You get the idea. But the passive aggressive, we're fighting. Do they keep getting updated?
You know, I was thinking
Is
about
there messaging going back and forth?
I haven't seen that happen in real life, but according to this BBC article, yeah, sometimes they have a conversation because
I
the
want to see
SSID.
Wi-Fi, SSID, love connection.
Will you marry me? Over SSID.
I mean,
and then
it hasn't been done yet. Somebody's got to pick that up. Go for it.
And the password is yes.
Oh. Do you want internet access? Marry me then. You know what to do.
You love my internet Wi-Fi so much. Why don't you marry me?
I was just thinking about how to implement this because I hate switching all my SSIDs, but you can set up a guest network. Now that I'm thinking, I'm like, yeah, okay. How do you actually do this? Set up a guest
This is
network.
something you want to participate
But
in.
why not? Why not say that I'm really tired of my neighbor, leaving her trash out? But I don't want to like reset all my machines.
And then you can redirect the guest network to only access one page where you have a longer
refuse.
complaint.
It could just be to the refuse company.
Yeah.
Like, would you?
Here's the garbage company website. All right, let's take a quick break. Thank our other sponsor for today's show, Gazelle. You want that new iPhone? You want that new Android? That new Windows Phone? All the gadgets are raining from the skies. How are you going to afford all the stuff you want? Let me tell you one way you can raise a little extra cash very simply without a lot of hassle. Go to Gazelle.com. Gazelle.com. Lock in a quote on your old iPhone, your old cell phone, your iPad you want to get rid of, and then keep the gadget for 30 days while you get the new gadget. Because they lock in the quote. Now, you could probably guess devices aren't likely to get more valuable over time. They're not antiques yet. So if you lock in the quote now, you're probably locking in the highest amount. And then you've got 30 days to decide whether you're going to sell that gadget. Once you got your new stuff, you're ready to sell it, print out a shipping label. Gazelle pays for the shipping. You send that device off to them, and they will look at it. They'll verify the condition. Sometimes they'll even pay for it even if it's broken. So be honest about the condition. And then you'll get paid fast by PayPal or by check. Your choice. It's risk-free to lock in a quote, so go do it today. Gazelle.com. Free shipping on most items. Even qualify for a free box. Sell your used iPhone today at Gazelle.com. I've done it with a ton of gadgets, and believe me, it helps clean up room and gets you a little extra cash in your PayPal account as well. Gazelle.com. We thank them for their support of Tech News Today. Hey, is that a calendar?
No, I'm just happy to see you. No, it is actually. Today, Canonical
You're not happy to
releases
see me.
version 12.10 of its Ubuntu Linux distribution, codenamed Quantal Quetzal, after a really interesting bird.
That'll help adoption.
Quantal represents the start of a new 2-year development cycle. Apple's complaint against Samsung at USITC's ruling is set for tomorrow. That's October 19th. Also tomorrow, October 19th, anybody buying Office 2010 or Office for Mac 2011 will also qualify for an upgrade to the equivalent version of Office 2013. And anybody who has been eagerly awaiting TweetBot for Mac, it is now official in the App Store. It's $20 though, so a little bit higher than what you might like to pay. But if it's worth it to you, it is official.
It's that
out of
Twitter
beta.
API. It makes it expensive.
Yeah, they've got a long post on their blog about why exactly it's $20. But if you're interested, it's now live.
Let's see what's incoming.
Incoming message.
Got a video voicemail, so I guess it's just a video mail, from Sean with an opinion on e-textbooks. Take it away, Sean.
Hey TNT crew, this is Sean from Pennsylvania. I'm currently a teacher at a high school level. I wanted to chime in on your episode 609 about the ebooks in education. First, ebooks are great. The best thing about them is that they're searchable, they're lighter, and they can be easily updated so that students always have the most up-to-date information available. Notation isn't an issue at this level because kids can't write in their books now anyway, so an ebook is not a big problem there. However, there are problems. One, most schools can't afford to give every student a device. So then you're talking about bring your own device initiatives. While many students have devices, a lot don't. And then we have enough problems with bullying when it comes to clothing and who has the cool clothes. What happens when you don't have the cool device or can't even afford a device at all? How are we going to rectify that on schools that have limited budgets as it is? Also, prices. Right now, ebook prices are through the roof, and schools can't afford it, especially when it's on a subscription model, and you have to pay every year. And we really have to think, are textbooks necessary in the 21st century classroom environment? That being said, rolling out a centralized way of controlling ebooks across all devices, both school-owned and student-owned, is really the first step that's necessary if we're going to use ebooks going forward. Without that, it's never going to catch on. Thanks for doing such a great job on your show. I listen every day.
Thank you, Sean. Great insights there. Kind of a nice balanced approach to the positives and negatives. It's like a little report. I love that. That was great. We also got a voicemail telling me how to pronounce the town in North Carolina where Google has their data center that they let Stephen Levy visit. It's very short, so...
From North Carolina, and was listening to episode 609, and Google's data center is in Lenoir, North Carolina. Thanks.
Oh, like Edgar Allan Poe. Okay, now I'll remember.
Lenore.
Lenore. Nevermore will I say it wrong.
Got an email from Neil who says, "Hey, TNT crew, love the show, listen daily. The conversation comparing the $499 32-gigabyte Surface to the 16-gigabyte iPad lacked one key point. We don't know how much space the Windows RT OS will occupy. The minimum Intel Windows 8 install size is 16 gigs. If the RT install ends up being half of that size, then users will get nowhere near 32 gigabytes of usable storage space. We know RT is more closely related to Windows 8 than Windows Phone, so I would guess an install size of at least 8 to 10 gigs. That would also explain why there's no 16 gigabyte Surface." Now, I read this, I was like, they can't take up more than half the space. That's ridiculous. So I did a little search, found a Reddit AMA with Panos Panay, GM of Microsoft Surface, and there was an answer to this very question from Ricardo Lopez, test manager for Surface RT, saying that after the operating system, Office RT, and a bunch of apps, you'll still have more than 20 gigabytes left on your 32 gigabyte Surface. So 12 gigabytes is taken up?
Not bad at all. Actually, getting 20 gigabytes open. Is there any?
And he points out that you can add an SD card as well.
Yeah, I was going to say there's expansion on there. So good luck doing that with your iPad.
I think it's less about how much space you can't use and more about how much overall space there is so that you still have a lot left.
That's true.
Got an email from Bruce in Canada. In episode 608, you talked about how Server Beach finally pulled the plug on EduBlogs when it noticed the offending file was still in the web server's cache, even though the file was no longer easily accessible to the public. I guess Server Beach wasn't aware that the DMCA has a provision excluding system cache content, it's section 512B, if the original copyrighted material has been removed. The service provider isn't liable for cached versions. If a service provider is going to be ham-fisted when it comes to the DMCA, then they should at least read the law first or hire better lawyers.
Bruce, appreciate that. They may have not felt that varnish cache qualifies under the DMCA as a cache. They're talking about the cache in a particular machine, so their lawyers may actually be pretty smart here. And I had a go around with a guy named Bobby on email where he wanted us to make a better point that Server Beach didn't have much of an option. And that he agreed, yeah, they probably should have reached out more to EduBlogs before they pulled the plug. But once you pull the plug and you're under the gun with the DMCA to maintain your safe harbor, they didn't have much option than to take down the entire platform.
Yeah, and yesterday Evan Brown made the point that if you were going to read the DMCA that way, it looks like Server Beach did a very conservative reading. So it could be that they thought it was okay.
They just have conservative lawyers, that's all. Well, that's it for this episode of Tech News Today. Thanks for everybody for submitting stories in our subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com. You can go out there and vote stories up or down or submit them yourself. And thank you, Don Reisinger, for joining us. Always good to have you. Let folks know
thanks a lot.
What you're up to, where they can follow you and find your work.
Yeah, obviously seen it. Write a column for eWeek, write a column for SlashGear, write a column for Fortune. So kind of all over the place. So, if you go to my Twitter, probably find a lot of stuff.
Just read the internet. You'll run into Don Reisinger eventually. He's all over my Google News every day. Thanks, man. Good to have you on.
All right, thanks
That's
a lot.
it for this show. You can find us on the web, twit.tv/TNT. You can email us, TNT@twit.tv, or give us a call, leave us a voicemail. Our phone number is 260-TNT-SHOW. We'll be back tomorrow. It's Friday, so Darren Kitchen will be with us. We'll see you then.